the 3rd of March 1944, inside a sealed SS research annex, alarms sounded without smoke or fire. At 0941 local time, instruments spiked while the room grew unnaturally quiet. What failed was not containment, but transition into a state no protocol defined. A technician collapsed before reaching the cutoff switch. Witnesses reported vertigo, crushing pressure behind the eyes, and a sudden metallic taste. Human bodies reacted faster than gauges, signaling disaster before any reading stabilized. Archival records later labeled the test a containment trial, carefully avoiding the word weapon. Funding bypassed Wehrmacht channels, routed directly through SS technical offices. Oversight narrowed as urgency replaced review. The apparatus itself was compact, surrounded by shielding designed to dampen vibration rather than blast. Engineers feared interaction effects more than force. Protection targeted behavior, not explosion, suggesting a risk tied to configuration. Medical notes recovered after the war list hemorrhaging, cardiac arrest, and acute neurological shock. Autopsies revealed no burns or shrapnel. Death arrived without a conventional mechanism investigators could isolate. An internal SS memo blamed operator error, yet schedules show identical procedures had succeeded days earlier. The variable was repetition. Accumulation, not mistake, appears to have pushed the system beyond tolerance. Power draw exceeded projections by 12% as ambient temperature dropped. Cooling systems inverted expectations. Analysts later flagged this paradox as the earliest measurable sign of instability, ignored under pressure to proceed. Safety officers requested suspension and were removed from the roster. Authority replaced caution as anomalies multiplied. The human antagonist was fear. The institutional one was command compressing decisions to a single signature. When the chamber was re-entered, instruments were intact but unreadable. Paper logs were warped, ink smeared as if dampened from within. Survivors refused detail, repeating one word only: misalignment. The site was sealed and remaining staff reassigned. The experiment's name vanished from schedules. What had killed its own scientists was not dismantled yet, but it would never be activated again. Subsequent trials were canceled without explanation. Power feeds were cut, then restored only for dismantling. Inventory logs show components removed one by one, never together, as if proximity alone risked recreating the fatal condition. An SS physician warned that symptoms worsened with familiarity. Veteran technicians reacted faster than novices, suggesting sensitization rather than tolerance. The finding contradicted doctrine and was quietly buried to avoid halting all work. Internal correspondence reveals pressure from Berlin to resume testing. Results promised strategic leverage. Local commanders stalled, citing infrastructure damage, using delay as resistance disguised as logistics. Engineers, assigned to tear down, worked in pairs on rotating shifts. No one remained longer than minutes. Watches were synchronized before entry and checked after exit. Drift beyond 2 seconds triggered evacuation. A surviving notebook describes a low hum felt through bone before instruments reacted. Headaches preceded spikes. The entry ends mid-sentence, ink trailing as if the writer's hand failed suddenly. SS auditors reframed the deaths as coincidence. Files were reclassified under environmental hazard. Abstraction diluted blame and preserved momentum even as confidence inside the facility collapsed. Rumors spread to other SS research sites. Requests for similar equipment were quietly denied. Procurement patterns shifted toward redundancy over concentration, admitting alignment itself had become dangerous. As Allied bombing intensified, the annex remained untouched. No flak, no decoys. It sat inert, protected not by defenses, but by deliberate disuse and fear of reactivation. Interrogations after the war captured fragments only. Witnesses agreed on symptoms, but not causes. The consistency of fear contrasted sharply with the absence of any shared theory. The experiment did not fail loudly. It failed inward, consuming its makers and leaving a silence more effective than secrecy. Allied intelligence later entered the annex and found it intact but inert. No blast scars, no sabotage. Instruments sat disconnected, cables cut cleanly. Reports described an unnatural calm, as if urgency itself had been evacuated before retreat. British analysts compared medical files across cases. Neurological shock without trauma dominated. The pattern resisted chemical or radiological explanations, raising doubts that a single physical agent caused the deaths. Soviet teams arrived weeks later and resealed several sections. Their logs used the phrase conditional danger. Translators flagged the wording as precise, implying risk depended on configuration, not mere presence. Local laborers described strict rotation rules. Workers stayed minutes at most and never discussed layout. Several refused to re-enter after watching engineers stagger out, pale and disoriented, clutching their temples. Archival photos show chalk marks forming incomplete circles on the floors. Engineers tracked alignment visually. During dismantling, those marks were scrubbed first, erasing geometry before any hardware moved. An SS directive ordered destruction of all theoretical notes. Only procedural manuals survived. The severing of cause from effect ensured no future team could infer function from outcomes alone. Post-war committees debated classification. With no artifact and no theory, the incident was folded into environmental hazards. The decision minimized attention while quietly preserving the lesson. Surviving scientists avoided related fields. Career shifts clustered toward safer disciplines. The human antagonist withdrew, leaving institutional caution to enforce boundaries without explanation. Occasional attempts to recreate conditions elsewhere ended early. Minor anomalies triggered shutdowns. Memory of deaths functioned as a kill switch embedded in culture. What killed its own scientists was not an explosion, but a behavior. Once recognized, the SS chose refusal over repetition, ending the experiment by denying its conditions ever meet again. Later, SS reviews quietly altered internal research doctrine. Projects were fragmented by default, assemblies delayed indefinitely. Risk was redefined as convergence, teaching engineers that alignment itself could be lethal before results appeared. Training circulars warned against elegance. Systems that appeared coherent were flagged for review. Complexity became a safety feature, preventing any single configuration from reaching an irreversible threshold. Medical boards revised exposure doctrine. Symptoms without visible injury were elevated above instruments. Human response was treated as an early warning system, acknowledging bodies sensed instability before machines. Historians later identified similar cancellations after 1944. Programs ended midstream without failure reports. The deaths became an unspoken precedent shaping decisions without ever being cited directly. Skeptics argued coincidence and wartime stress explained everything. Yet procedural changes persisted long after personnel rotated out. Institutions remembered what individuals could not safely articulate. Outside classified channels, rumors expanded. Stories exaggerated effects into myth stripping away the caution that ended the work. Absence of facts invited speculation louder than evidence. Intelligence estimates warned myth could provoke reconstruction attempts. The true safeguard, analysts argued, was incompletion, ensuring dangerous conditions never converged again under curiosity or competition. By the early Cold War, the incident vanished from briefings. Procedures remained. Engineers learned limits as rules without stories. The cause no longer mattered, only the boundary. The experiment killed its own scientists by revealing a line that could not be crossed twice. Survival required refusal, not mastery, once the danger was understood. Its legacy was not a device, but a doctrine. When knowledge begins killing its makers, the only victory is stopping before understanding completes. In later declassification cycles, archivists noticed synchronized gaps across SS and Allied files for the same weeks of 1944. Box numbers existed without contents. Indices referenced documents never filed, suggesting deliberate, coordinated removal. A retired analyst recalled a briefing with no diagrams, only arrows and warnings. The message was blunt. Convergence creates states you cannot unwind. No one explained what had taught them that lesson. Whistleblowers later hinted at false starts in post-war programs. Each followed the same pattern. Early anomalies appeared, oversight intervened, teams were split, and projects dissolved before alignment could occur. Engineering culture shifted quietly. Elegance became suspect. Unified systems triggered review. Design that refused to fully integrate were considered safer than those promising clarity and control. The absence of facts fed legend. Outside archives, the story mutated into myth, detaching danger from discipline. What had been stopped through restraint returned without breaks, amplified by rumor. Intelligence agencies warned that myth itself posed risk. Curiosity could drive reconstruction attempts. The paradox deepened. Secrecy reduced internal danger but increased external fascination. By the late Cold War, the incident survived only as a caution without origin. Procedures endured. Engineers obeyed limits whose cause they never learned, inheriting fear as policy. The SS experiment was not erased because it failed, but because it worked too well. It revealed a configuration where knowledge turned lethal, forcing those who saw it to choose survival over completion.